There are lots of great IM that cost only around $20, and right now Kbear has joined the battle with their newest cheapest IM at only $20. So hello and welcome to Aftersound Review, and this is my review for the Kbear Storm that is using only a single dynamic driver. And just like usual, I will break down this review from the build, fit, frequency response, sound, and comparison. And thank you for Keep High Five for providing me with this Kbear Storm. Well, for me, there's nothing special about this build quality. It's made of plastic and it's really clear. You could see all of its cables and also the driver. You could see everything, and it's using QDC Type-C kind of pin with typical Chi-Fi cable for around $20. Nothing special about it. In regarding its ergonomics, I'd like to show you that the pin placement is a little bit on the outer side. It's almost really on the edge of the faceplate itself, so it's a little bit far from my ears, and that caused a little bit of problem. Sometimes when I'm using them just casually like this, it can be easily pulled like that because it doesn't really hook my ears on the inner side. It's almost on the edge, but other than that, I feel that the housing itself has no problem. It's just that pin placement a bit of problem for me. Now, regarding the sound of this Kbear Storm, it is very easy to say that it's a V-shaped IM. You could see there's a lot of elevation in bass area, and it has a minor roll off in the sub bass area. After that, there's a huge elevation around the upper mid range and mid treble area. So yeah, this is simply said a V-shaped IM that immediately feels like it lacking lower mid range fullness to make songs sound full. It's simply a bright V-shaped kind of sound. Actually, the bass punch and slam itself is quite good, but for me, I do miss that the little sub bass rumble isn't really elevated here, so you mostly get a mid-bass punch and impact, but doesn't really go rumbling. It's kind of obvious when I'm hearing some orchestral music, when there's a rumbling bass like dum dum like that. It doesn't give you that, but more like fullness in its mid-bass punch. But nevertheless, it's a quite good kind of bass that will suit musics like pop or EDMs, or maybe some rocks music that still sounds really great with this IM. But after the bass, even though I like the bass, the mid-range elevation is way too much. For me, it's way too much, because no matter what kind of vocal, whether it's male, it's female, and whether they are Asian or they are Europeans, or no matter what kind of vocal I hear through these IMs, it's always that the upper pitch of human voice that gets elevated. So whether it's male or female or wherever you're coming from, the thing that I always gets to hear is the upper human voice that gets elevated. So when you hear singers, you get more of a higher sound voice like this, as if I'm constantly speaking like this, instead of a more balanced way like this. So for me, it's annoying. It's no matter what kind of song I throw at them, it's always distracting me because of how the elevation is on the upper human pitch. It makes every kind of vocal sounds squeaky, and kind of squashed, you know. It's not full enough, it's not thick enough to be said a natural kind of voice. And also the piano and also guitar are also losing their weight. It somehow sounds thin, but really pushed in a not really good way. Well, honestly, the treble has nice sparkle on it, but that's it. I don't really hear anything special about the treble. It's not really overly extended or anything like that. It's just okay treble, but yeah, for me the main problem is because of that mid-range hollowness and upper mid-range and treble elevation. As an overall, this kind of V-shape is a very typical, I would say that's a typical bad V-shape kind of sound. The bass is really elevated, there's a hollowness in the mid-range, and after that mid-range, you get a very pushed upper mid-range, making any kind of song sounds thinner than I'd like to, and also it's simply shouty and not really pleasant for me. But I do say that the technicalities of this IM is quite good because of that pushed mid-range. It does gives a clarity towards human voice or towards any words that you hear from the singer. You do get the words really clearly, but at the price of naturality. It simply doesn't sound natural for me, even though it has good clarity. But other than that, I do think that it's not really remarkable. I mean, the soundstage, I know it's a little bit 3D-ish, but again, it's not spatial. The more spatial part is also the upper mid-range because of how clear it is. But at the same time, it's like a two-edge of the sword. You do get very squeaky and very elevated, higher pitch human voice, but you also get that clarity. So whether you like it or not, I think that it becomes kind of niche in this category. But personally, I don't like this kind of tuning. So how is it compared to one of a bright IM2 at around $20 price point like this TRN MT3? Well, for me, even though the TRN MT3 also missing that kind of mid-range warmth, but the elevation on the MT3, it's more linear. That makes it somehow sounds more natural, even though it's still on the brighter side, but you can tell it's a good bright kind of sound from the MT3. But from this, it's really uneven. You could see there's a huge, after that big bass, the bass is bigger than the MT3. So that hollowness you feel on the mid-range is more noticeable on this Kbear Storm. And after that, the elevation is, again, it's more linear on the MT3, even though again it's a more somehow more linear kind of set. It still sounds kind of bright, but in a better way. Rather than this, you do feel that there's a valley there, and after that there's a mountain. It's really uneven, and for me that really distracting me from enjoying the sound. Comparing them with another V-shaped kind of sound from the CCA CRA Plus, for me it is simply said the CCA CRA Plus is a much better tuned V-shaped IM. You can see that they both have that fullness around the bass area, but after that, the mid-range is much more even, it's much more balanced and not as elevated as the Kbear Storm, so that makes female and male vocal sounds more natural and also full. It doesn't go forward in the upper mid-range, making things sound squeaky, but in the CCA CR Plus, it's just much more natural. And also the treble itself, maybe it's not as pushed as the Kbear Storm around the mid-treble area, but in terms of extension, well, CCA CR Plus simply reach higher. So that's all I could say about this Kbear Storm. Personally, I simply said that it is maybe for someone who likes that kind of shoutiness. The human voice will sound shouty, it's forward, it's clear, but it's thin and it's elevated in a strange way. Personally, if you ask me, I definitely don't like this kind of sound. It's just way too strange, and the hollowness on the mid-range is really apparent. That's why, at least for me, I couldn't give a really high rank for this IM, and this is my final score for its tonality and its technical. And so this is my final score. I simply said, if you believe in this reviewer, this is simply a not good IM, and there are a lot of better choices out there. And I'm sorry Kbear, but this cannot compete.